is the comedians who got caught stealing
The
jokes.
number one rule in comedy is simple. Never steal
There is the Robin Williams.
another comedian's jokes. Most comics spend months, sometimes years, testing material until it's perfect, only to have someone swoop in, steal the punchline, and reap the reward without doing the work. You've probably felt it before. You say something funny, someone repeats it louder, and they get all the laughs. Now imagine someone did that to a joke that could legitimately
I
change
mean, it's how they said it,
your
and that's
life.
matters.
Unfortunately, it happens all the time. And today we are going to talk about some of the most undeniable cases of joke theft in comedy history, starting with Brendan Schaub, who became best friends with the most famous comedian in the industry and still managed to destroy his career.
You steal our ideas and you sit there and you pass them off as your own, and you even botch it when you do it. You botch it when you do it every single time. You sit there and you rip off our ideas. It's plagiarism 101. Except you're not writing anything, you're saying it. And it's harder to catch that way.
Joe Rogan was the one who convinced Brendan to become a comedian instead of a professional fighter, a decision he might later regret. From the beginning, it was clear that Schaub was not ready for this career change. The JRE fandom initially enjoyed Brendan's company as their goofy, peaked-in-high-school athlete with obvious
I don't think he's very good at fighting too,
of
so
CTE, but that was as a guest on a podcast. Stand-up comedy is a whole different beast, and Brendan simply did not have the experience. And since Rogan surrounded himself with veteran comedians like Ari Shaffir, Tom Segura, and Joey Diaz, Schaub sort of came across as like a nepo baby. Since Schaub was now surrounded by vets, it seemed like he felt like he needed to act like a master of his craft instead of treating himself like a humble student of the game trying to soak up knowledge from the OGs. He released his first official stand-up special within 1 year of doing comedy, something most comedians spend a decade working on. From there, he started hosting events and launched multiple comedy podcasts. But it was after he released his second special on YouTube called The Gringo Papi that comedy fans seriously felt Schaub did not belong in this industry.
Whenever you move in a new house, it's always weird, but it's even weirder in the middle of a pandemic. So we move in a new house, my girl goes, Papi, I've seen the neighbors. They're pretty old. Let's play it safe. They're probably COVID conscious. Why don't you just go over and introduce yourself, right? I'll bake some Mexican cookies, and you go over there. I'm like, what the f***'s Mexican cookie? What are you talking about? It's like a chocolate chip with salsa all over it? What are you talking about?
People are always underestimating Brendan Schaub. He was the first comedian to ever release a special without jokes. Nobody laughed harder than Brendan Schaub during the entire set. This guy sure has some hidden talent. Hope he finds it one day. Even with the Rogan friendship advantage, Schaub had entered comedy hell. His special bombed, his live show audiences were getting smaller and smaller, and his own subreddit was now entirely taken over by people who despised him. And they did not just expose Brendan for being bad at comedy, they accused him of taking people's jokes and making them worse. Like when he made a similar Rocky Balboa joke as Bill Burr during his legendary Philadelphia rant.
Philadelphia has a statue of Rocky Balboa. It's not even real.
Bill Burr is the most funniest in this one.
Now this could just be a coincidence. After all, Rocky is a staple figure of Philadelphia. Or maybe it was just an accident. And accidents happen. Chances are you know someone who has been seriously hurt in an accident. If that wasn't bad enough, they end up with huge bills from the hospital, making not only their health a concern, but also their finances. When you're seriously hurt, your injury could be worth millions. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm with over 1,000 attorneys operating in all. It's so easy. Or by scanning the queue. Bit about ordering fajitas from Chili's seems a little too similar to Nick Swardson's.
Because it's more than a meal, it's very exciting. When you order a fajita, you order them, and then a couple minutes later, they bring them out, and it is loud.
I want that same feeling? I go to Chili's and order fajitas. You know what I'm talking about, you order those fajitas, it's poppin'.
Blatantly stealing jokes.
Smoke, it's like 4th of July. Everyone's like, oh my God, what is that? What the is that?
Those fajitas hit the floors all. And we're like, what the? Come on, right here, bitch. Right here.
Now sure, Chili's is a very popular restaurant with thousands of locations, but specifically talking about the excitement of receiving fajitas feels like it wouldn't even be that funny unless another comedian had success with it. But Swardson tried to clear the air, expressing that there wasn't any bad blood between them.
You know what I mean? Just waiting to get drilled by Shab. Just sitting there. Shab, Thief or Sutherland. Yeah, God, that's what I call him.
Dang, bro.
No, I'm kidding. There's a bit about Shab, like, I guess he said, people say he stole some fajita joke from me.
Did he?
I don't care. It was just funny. I know Brendan. I don't care if he did, but I doubt it. I mean, he's had fajitas.
Yeah, a lot of people have had fajitas, yeah.
Now, he didn't necessarily outright deny that Shab took the material, but he clearly didn't think it was a big deal. However, Shab didn't like the idea that they were even considering that he may have stole the jokes, so he outright denied any and all allegations.
Remember when he was on the Fire and the Kid back to the old studio? Yeah. And he roasted us? He said I look like an Italian Lego.
He's so good. Nick is the guy. I just talked.
The funniest guy of all time. So I do, it's not a special anything. I do that bit at the Comedy Store. I wrote it, I don't know, right before I went on, right? So I do that bit maybe 3 times, and then some fan was like, oh, that's like Nick Swartson's bit. I go, Nick has a fajita bit? He goes, yeah. And this is what people don't realize. The comedy community is pretty tight-knit. We all know each other. So all I do is Nick, as a friend, is text him and go, hey, man, heard you have fajita bit. I have a new bit that I wrote about fajitas. You have fajita bit? He goes, I have something like it. What's your premise? I go, fajitas, how embarrassing it is when you wear fajitas. It's sizzling. It's like we're in bottle service at the club. He goes, not exactly like mine.
I mean, what if you come up to a show on your own and
not exactly like mine.
happen to coincide?
And I can see how people see it. I went, all good, not going to do it anymore. Well, I was even influenced
There's
by
also a possibility.
Nick Swartzen. I've never seen his hour. I just know. I don't watch a ton of comedy. I've never seen a special. I've never seen anything.
You don't steal jokes.
We've had him on the,
So
no.
silly.
This is a classic Shab response that built him a reputation for being untrustworthy. He says how Nick Swartzen is the funniest guy of all time and that they are friends, but then immediately contradicts that by saying he has never seen Nick's material, never seen his special, and doesn't watch comedy at all.
That's a cap.
Therefore, it's impossible he could have stolen his joke. So he is either lying about stealing the joke or lying about how he feels about Nick's comedy. From there, fans discovered that he was blatantly taking jokes from classic movies like Step Brothers.
He's my. I'm the first one. He's Kobayashi.
You mess with my nut, Brennan? Randy here is gonna eat your like Kobayashi.
Now again, to give him the benefit of the doubt, this
Severance
could be interpreted as a reference, like him paying homage to a legendary comedy film. However, this next one is hard to defend, as Brendan may have snagged some material from a TikToker.
Been drinking Bud Light for years, man. And I don't see how it makes you gay.
How about Bud Light? God, they messed up, huh? Boy, they just didn't leave the room, did they? I don't see the problem with Bud Light, dude. I love Bud Light. Like, dude, people are so homophobic. Like, oh, you're drink Bud Light, turn.
Oh no, he's going to do it, huh?
Get out of here.
I'm not sure what's worse, stealing material from legendary comedians who will obviously find out, or
My TikToker
being
related.
a professional comedian and looking for new jokes on TikTok. But if none of these were good enough examples, here's a moment where Brendan stole a joke from the TV show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia about Hulk Hogan, and Rogan specifically asked Brendan when he came up with the joke, giving him the opportunity to essentially come clean and give credit to the original creator, but he doesn't, and he passes it off as his own.
Not Hulk Hogan's hair. It's blonde and yet it's silken like that of a Chinese man.
Yes, that is Hulk Hogan's signature look. Blonde Chinese hair and the skin of a hot dog. It's awesome.
What'd you say? What'd you say?
Look, he's jumping out of a cake. Boss is the one with the Hulk Hogan skin, the hot dog skin. Yeah, that's him on top.
Hot dog skin is hilarious.
How funny is that?
That's the tannest, best-looking guys have hot dog skin.
They all have hot dog skin, right? Hulk Hogan looks like a hot dog.
Dude, hot dog skin is the best expression ever.
No.
When did you come up with that?
For a while ago.
A while ago.
That's beautiful.
That's how I describe Hulk Hogan.
Congratulations.
No, the voice, bruh.
Congratulations. There's a few
Just to avoid copyright.
descriptions in my life that have really sunk home.
With the overwhelming amount of criticism from comedy fans, and after his best buddy Rogan said his stand-up comedy wasn't even good, Shaw basically quit.
Yeah, I think this time I just don't care. That's where I'm at. I gotta be home more. I'm gonna pull back from touring so much, and I just gotta be home, man.
So the parents go to him, huh?
I can't miss Tiger's games. Can't miss my Boss D growing up, baby girl. I can't do it anymore. I'm tired, man. I'm tired.
And while this seems like a valid reason to take a step back in other industries, it's clear that Schaub realized he didn't have the skill nor material to stay in the game. However, Schaub nabbing jokes from other comedians honestly wasn't surprising. He was new to the industry and already hated by fans. But Dane Cook, that one shocked people. He was selling out arenas, hosting SNL, starring in movies. He was literally the face of comedy for a moment. So when the plagiarism accusations hit, the entire industry turned on one of its biggest stars. Dane Cook was one of the few comedians that legitimately became a superstar, and he did that by taking advantage of social media. Now today, obviously comics are going to use social media to grow their careers. You would be crazy not to. But back in the MySpace era, this was seen as corny, and some industry comics felt Dane's success was undeserved. And while Dane saw a massive influx of young comedy fans, mostly college kids, traditional stand-up fans didn't really find Dane Cook's joke delivery that great. He stuck to observational humor, avoiding punchlines and resorting to cheap tactics to keep the audience laughing.
I know, it is so true, and that's why it's funny. It is so true. That's why it's funny. Because it's so true, hence funny.
Then again, comedy is entirely subjective, and at the end of the day, the goal is to make people laugh. So if the crowd is laughing, then it's hard to say the comic is not funny, right? Dane saw the haters as just a natural side effect to his rapid rise to stardom, but even some of his own fans questioned if he deserved the platform he had after he released his special Retaliation, not because it wasn't funny, but rather because some of the jokes were not actually his. A few of Dane's jokes and premises were very similar to those explored on Louis C.K.'s 2001 album, Live from Houston, Texas, starting with a bit that they both did when choosing a weird name for their child.
Name, you know, like a name with no vowels, maybe, you know, just like just like 40 F's. That's his name.
Whatever the names that you come up with, that's exciting right there. You get to both decide, hey, do you want to name that? No, I don't like that name. Right? It's like a little game. You try to come up. I already have names picked out. I don't even know. First kid, boy, girl, I don't care. The first one that comes out, I'm naming it.
And if this was the only similar joke between Dane and Louis,
I mean, the second one is funnier, I
it could have been
guess.
seen as simply a coincidence. Even Steve Martin had a joke in the 1970s where he discusses parents naming their kids. Some people think that Louis and Dane were actually both inspired by Steve Martin's
So they both are stealing jokes from him.
But then, two more jokes were spotted that made it even more suspicious. Like this one about an itchy beehole.
Like I was staying in a hotel and the soap was really nasty, and I had an itchy asshole for like a week, and I could have won $1 million. I still would have been going, my ass.
The other day, I don't know if you've ever gotten this, it was about 2:30 in the afternoon. I got the itchiest I've ever gotten on record. And I keep a record of my itchy May 14th, 1985, I had a very itchy...
Again, maybe just a coincidence. After all, anyone who has had an itchy
And it's not a coincidence, bruh.
behind knows this pain. But then, Dane delivered a third joke premise that was awfully similar to Louis, one about not being able to speak when
Why
your
is you always copying from this guy,
life is being
bruh?
threatened by
And just copy from different person or something.
oncoming traffic.
And I didn't know what to do. I was like, I wanted to yell something, but what do you yell? And I'm trying to, like, time slows down. I'm trying to choose the thing to yell that will have all the information that he needs. Because it was happening really fast. I had, like, that much time to yell, you know, what can I yell in that much time? It's, hey, you guys, oh my God! You know, that's not...
I did try to help this man. As the car was coming towards him, I reached out, and I said, oh! Oh! That's all I could think of to say.
All three jokes have major differences in their delivery, but it's an extreme coincidence that Dane's 2005 comedy album has 3 bits that cover the exact same premises as Louis' 2001 album. And in a weird turn of events, Louis invited Dane onto his television show to do a scripted scene where he confronts Dane.
I think you saw me do them. I know you saw me do them, and I think they just went in your brain. And I don't think you meant to do it, but I don't think you stopped yourself either. And that's why I never felt the need to help you not be hated by a lot of people. But I feel bad.
Okay, this is just awkward now.
I mean, I do. I feel bad.
If this were the end of the accusations, maybe Dane could have gotten away with it. However, this was not his last offense. Dane was accused of taking material from Dimitri Martin in 2006, where they both talk about asking for a shoe size and the worker comes back with the wrong size, resulting in them having to cut a piece of their foot off.
I went into a shoe store and I said, hey, can I get those in a 10? The guy said, sure, and he went in the back. Then a couple minutes later he came out and he goes, I don't have a 10, I have a 9. Great. Because while you were in the back, my toes were severed off.
Again, recapping, do you have those in a 12, right? She goes into the stock room, she's in there for about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, right? She walks out, she comes up to me, you guys, so enthusiastic, such like optimism. She's holding a boot. She comes right up to me and she goes, we have it in 9. Great, you guys also have a bone saw anywhere nearby?
Dane's premise was nearly identical to Dimitri's. This one's really hard to defend. Most joke theft can be justified because they are often relatable scenarios that anyone could have experienced, but cutting off your foot to fit into a shoe is way too creative and specific. As if it couldn't get any worse, Joe Rogan even says Dane stole one of his bits about tigers f***ing, but Dane changed it from tigers to rhinos. Rogan took matters into his own hands and confronted Dane with a phone call, seeking an explanation. Allegedly, Dane apologized to Joe and said he would remove the bit, but then 2 weeks later, Joe caught Dane telling another joke of his on stage once again. Then Joe confronted confronted Dane
Okay, the guy does not care, huh?
person saying, "What the F are you doing? You know that's my bit. You heard me say it. What the F makes you think you can take my material and do it on stage?" The two have since made amends for the whole incident, with Joe forgiving him and praising him for bringing comedy to social media, but the joke theft left a serious mark on Cook's career. The rest of his comedy journey has been a brutal nosedive from where it was at its peak. Sure, Cook had a large fan base, but most stand-up addicts wanted nothing more than to see him disappear. However, some comics get away with stealing jokes their entire career, and their fan base has no idea, like Robin Williams, a comedy legend who wholeheartedly admits to stealing material, and people still don't believe it. Robin's stand-up felt like an unscripted, endless stream of consciousness. You just had to sit there in amazement as he'd fill a 1 hour
I mean, he's actually that good, so
special with riddles, puns, long setups, and one-liners
and
at
the delivery is everything.
an extremely fast pace. But a lot of this success came from the constant battle inside Robin's head. Most of his career involved drug abuse and crippling depression, and he never hesitated to turn these experiences into art.
Little sip of Perrier here. I had to stop drinking alcohol because I used to wake up noon, head of my car with my keys and my... Hi, can I help you? No, thanks. It's just flooded. I'll be okay. Beautiful, baby. Beautiful, yeah.
As fun as it was for the audience to see Robin Williams firing on all cylinders, a lot of comics didn't find it amusing at all, mostly because they'd be sitting in a club ready to go on, and suddenly they'd hear Robin use one of their jokes. One comic got so upset that he threw Williams against the wall before demanding $300 for a stolen bit. Robin said, "In the old days, if you hung out
The violence.
comedy clubs, which I was doing almost 24/7, you hear things. And then,
Maybe he's just jealous, I guess.
if you're improvising, you're all of a sudden repeating jokes and going, oh, my brain was working that way. I was also like the bank of comedy." Then when he got confronted for stealing the material, he said, "Oh, here you go. Here's money. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I just paid loads of cash." And then after a while, I went, "I bought that line already, and I had to pay again." I went, "Oh, I'm sorry." Now, this practice of buying jokes might seem a little strange. We like to think that our favorite comedians made their material strictly from their personal experiences, but buying jokes has been a common practice since stand-up started. Sometimes the joke just clicks so well with the rest of a comedian's act that they can't help but pay real money to take it for themselves. It's very similar to a musician having a songwriter. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but some people feel like it knocks down your credibility if you're not the one doing 100% of the work. However, for Robin, he seemed to regret the way he
no one's doing 100% of their
went
jokes,
about
bro.
acquiring material. Every performance he gave on stage was like going into a trance, and he was so eager to make the audience laugh at every beat, he often blurted out material that wasn't his because it helped him avoid that horrible feeling of bombing.
Well, then you have to accept that idea that where they can, where either they laugh with you or they laugh at you. At some point, you have to be comfortable if they're laughing at you.
With either one, laughing at you. Can you tolerate that? And that's maybe sometimes where I go, the insecure part goes, no.
What are you afraid will happen?
I guess it's that fear of you'll recognize that they're, as you know, how insecure are we really?
Yeah.
How desperately insecure that made us do this for a living.
Now, this temperament is what protected Robin Williams from the downfall that often follows being labeled as a joke thief. He was always brutally honest with himself, no matter how bad it made him feel. Before his tragic death in 2014, Robin made a habit of
He actually admits to it, I
avoiding
guess.
comedy clubs outside of performing. He started to realize that he was a sponge, unintentionally taking material from every experience he had and turning it into comedy without a second thought. And when it comes to comedy or the creative process in general, he is not alone. There's actually a psychological explanation for why comedians unknowingly take material from others, and it's called cryptomnesia. Cryptomnesia is a type of memory bias in which a person unconsciously remembers something and believes that they have thought of it themselves. Some people also refer to it in comedy as parallel thinking, and it happens all the time in your real life. Maybe you were at a party, sharing a great story about a personal experience with a close friend, only for that same friend to tell your story at another party next week, but with their own personal spin on it. And if you call them out, they'll give you a blank stare like nothing ever happened. And that's probably because they don't remember you telling them. They just unconsciously added it to their memory bank because laughter from others leads to an instant hit of dopamine, and they are looking for their next fix. Even psychology professors teaching students about cryptomnesia have noticed them falling victim to it.
I work with college students, and often throughout the year, I give them a lot of different examples for different psychological principles. And later on in the year, sometime, they'll repeat these examples to me as if they came up with them on their own.
This can happen whenever a person encounters an idea or piece of information but forgets where they saw or heard it. Suddenly, they feel like they had a magical epiphany about a new invention or charming anecdote, and they truly walk around believing that it was their original thought. While a handful of comedians are notorious for stealing
That's interesting.
jokes, almost every comedian doing stand-up has been guilty of unintentionally stealing ideas and making them their own. Even Louis C.K. has gone on record saying this is probably what happened between him and Dane Cook, and Robin Williams' experience at the comedy club matches this description perfectly. It's not that they saw a special and deliberately stole someone else's ideas, it's that they're totally immersed in the world of comedy and accidentally archived a bit in their brain before going on stage. Then again, this is a convenient excuse for stealing, and sometimes the joke theft is so obvious that there's almost no way they made a mistake, and if you get called out on it, it could be the death of your career. Like when Joe Rogan exposed Carlos Mencia for being one of the biggest joke thieves in the history of comedy. Carlos Mencia was one of the most recognized names in the early 2000s comedy industry. He had killer stage presence, good timing, and amazing delivery, but behind the curtain, his reputation wasn't the best. Among other comics, he was considered the greasiest guy in the business. There was an open secret in the scene mean that if Carlos heard your joke and he liked it, he'd steal it. His joke stealing got so out of hand that sometimes he'd pitch stolen material to the very people he took it from. On the Mikey radio show, Carlos called in and acted like he had this hilarious original sketch idea.
There's stereotypes and you just do this and that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to have a stereotype Olympics. So we did that yesterday. We actually had a stereotype Olympics where we had 5 guys, black guy, white guy, Asian guy, a Middle Eastern guy, and a Hispanic guy, and we had them just compete in stereotypical events to see if everybody actually had.
But the second he hung up the phone, Mikey revealed that Carlos stole the bit from another DJ.
Stereotypical Olympics is an idea that some DJs came up with in Miami. In fact, we heard the idea from these guys in Miami, and we were going to do it here on the air. Yeah. We heard the idea from them at Morning Show Boot Camp last year. Oh.
Yeah, like in our...
It seems like the guy knows all the jokes, huh?
Notes back from boot camp.
Or is just the audience helping, I guess?
Yeah, we got it in our notes.
It's like
Stereotypical
I have an email
Olympics.
from about 10 months ago that says Stereotypical Olympics, and it lists basically exactly everything he said they did.
No.
And so here we are.
Oh, F.
Here we are talking about the fight between him and Rogan, where Rogan says this.
Of course he would. You know why he would? Because he's a thief and a scumbag.
And after years of this behavior, comedians were finally tired of it, and eventually Joe Rogan decided to do something about it. It's important to remember at the time, Carlos Mencia was much more famous than Joe Rogan. Mencia had his own TV show, voiced in animated series, had multiple popular comedy specials on HBO and Comedy Central, and Rogan, on the other hand, was mostly known as the host of Fear Factor. Plus, the UFC was not nearly as large as it is today, and Rogan's podcast did not even exist yet. Also in the comedy industry, one of the most important rules at that time was whether you are a comic or a patron, filming another person's set was forbidden. Therefore, it was extremely difficult to prove that Mencia's joke theft was actually happening. So Joe Rogan created a plan to expose him.
Mitzi was like, wow, stay away from him. You know, I basically told the whole story. I'm like, Mitzi, he's stealing comedians' material and doing their closing bits right before he brings them up on stage. When he's there, we flash the light so that people know that he's in the audience so you don't do your bit.
I would just do crowd work, and then Tommy would get mad at me all the time. Why don't you do your set? I'm not gonna do my set in front of that guy.
Because he's a notorious joke thief, and there were comics, a lot of my good buddies would not go on stage if he was in the room.
Rogan's right-hand man today is young Jamie, but back in the day, it was comedian Brian Redband. At some point, Redband started secretly collecting footage of Carlos Mencia's thievery, with the intention of making a video and posting it to Rogan's website. But the final part of this expose would come in 2007 when Rogan stormed the stage during one of Mencia's live performances at the Comedy Store to reveal to the audience who he really was.
I'm somebody important enough that he had to end the show by saying Carlos Mencia. That's who I am.
You don't know that no guy supports it. You don't know, man. If someone steals
Give him a mic or something.
in the news constantly. Steal and make it on HBO, steal, put it on television. What are you saying? Listen, I know you guys don't acting like a little. No, you're saying that. Yes. I agree with you. They don't even know what I do.
After this confrontation, Rogan felt like this was the nail in the coffin for Mencia's career. Rogan uploaded this video compilation to his website and YouTube titled Carlos Mencia vs. Joe Rogan. This video smashed together the IRL confrontation, clips of Mencia's stolen material, as well as commentary from other comics backing Rogan's claims.
Yes, go ahead. Tell everybody.
You steal material.
What material? What material?
You already bit verbatim about
Wait a minute. Oh, you mean the bit that either George Lopez did when he just did that show?
Ari did it a long time ago when he was opening for you. You saw him do it.
He opened for. He never opened for me. Did I open for you? Did that joke? I was doing that joke before. Yes, bro. I was.
Here's this new thing, I don't know if you guys heard this. He wants to build a new wall.
It's drama, bro.
All down the California-Mexico border. Like a 12-foot high brick wall. It's like 3 feet deep. So no Mexicans get in. But I'm like, dude, Arnold, who do you think's going to build that wall?
I propose that we kick all the illegal aliens out of this country. Then we build a super fence so they can't get back in. And I went, who's going to build it? That's the joke. Do you really think that a Jewish guy came up with that joke before?
The video also included a radio interview of legendary Latino comic George Lopez talking about how he physically assaulted Mencia after he stole Lopez's material.
I think I had him on my show.
Oh, the Mind of Mencia. That's what you're talking about.
You have a feud with him, right?
I don't know if it's much a feud as...
Did you punch him out or something?
Yeah, I did.
You did? What happened? Tell me.
Well, you know, the guy was pretty liberal with some of the material, you know. And
this is a comedian?
He had an HBO one-night stand that I think had like... we counted 13 minutes of my material on it. And
wow.
We contacted HBO, and I think they pulled it for a while.
George Lopez and grab you by your neck and slam you up against left back of the wall, rip off your HBO special? Yeah. What? You know what he did? Because you're a liar, bro. He didn't do it to me. George Lopez at me. Give me a hug. What's up? George Lopez actually said on Howard Stern that he doesn't want any other Hispanic comedian to make it except for him. Yeah, maybe he said that.
Additionally, there was an interview with Bobby Lee that essentially proved how comedians were scared of telling the truth of Mencia's joke theft.
Yeah, Nat, do a couple minutes of his material. Well, I'll just do some of my material and then it'll be a second. So I'll just talk about myself. What has he ever stolen from you? I used to this bit about how I was so small that my dad would have to get on my shoulders to get on rides at Disneyland. Yeah. Then he did a bit, literally, but this is, I can't do it. Where's this? Who cares? Where's the reality? Anyways, good to see you. This is the reason why comedians get away with stealing, because comedians like you are afraid of confrontation.
Now, if Rogan posted this expose video today, Carlos Mencia's career would have likely ended overnight. But at the time, Mencia was a huge draw, selling out shows and bringing in serious money. Rogan was actually seen as the troublemaker in this situation, the guy calling out the cash cow and stirring up controversy on stage. And since Mitzi Shore, owner of the Comedy Store, had strong ties to Mencia and prioritized business over beef, Rogan was banned from the Comedy Store for nearly 10 years, and Carlos kept doing shows like nothing happened. After this situation, you can imagine Mencia felt untouchable. What would have ended his career turned into a small inconvenience that he shrugged off, and Rogan was
I mean, he made all the money, so
the one who was punished.
no one cares anymore.
His confidence at an all-time high, in a 2010 documentary, Mencia straight up admitted that he was a joke thief.
A lot of people out there are going to ask, why did they interview Carlos about this? You know, Carlos is a joke thief. Carlos steals jokes, and we know this. And listen to me, and look at me when I tell you this with all honesty. If you think that I steal jokes, yeah, you're right. Of course I steal jokes. Are you out of your mind? When I come to a comedy club, you better run. You better get the off stage, because if anything you say is even remotely funny, I'm gonna make it mine, and all I'm gonna do is say Mexican in the front.
But Carlos could not be protected by his status forever. The internet started playing a much bigger role in a comedian's popularity, as many of them built their fan bases online through podcasting and social media. Fans develop a deeper connection with podcast comedians because they feel like they know the real person behind the stand-up act. Nobody was afraid to
Para social relationship.
Mencia's joke theft online, and once fans saw the receipts, Mencia started facing serious consequences.
The infamous Carlos Mencia.
Infamous.
You've become kind of infamous.
Dude, it's so weird, man. I was at the Comedy Store on, what was it, Saturday night, and I popped in really late, like, on purpose.
Right.
Just because I knew, you know, all right, I'm going to bump somebody, but at least it'll be, like, toward the end, and it won't be, you know, so I got there literally at 1 something.
Yeah.
Did about 20 minutes or so, and, you know, the crowd was happy. They were great. It was awesome. You know, I'm out back. And you know how this parking lot is structured, and there's a big ramp where they park on the other side by the hotel.
Yeah.
A guy literally sitting on the door, the passenger side, holding like probably a flip or something like that, pointing it at me, just yells out, "You suck! You're the worst piece of ever! F you!" And I'm just like, really? Is that necessary, bro? Like, honestly, wow.
Even South Park made an episode roasting Carlos Mencia for his reputation as a compulsive liar.
Yeah, viva la Mexico! So, Carlos, you've got a show on Comedy Central, a stand-up tour. Where did you have time to come up with this classic joke? Well, you know, I was just kicking it with my homies and my brain. You know, my brain's always so full of ideas because I'm so funny and stuff. So I was just all like, "Hey, Pepito, you like fish sticks?" And my homeboy says, "Yeah, Carlos, you know, you're so funny." And it just occurred to me, I was like, "Oh, man, you must be gay fish, Holmes." Oh, man, okay, look, it wasn't me. I didn't really start the fish stick thing, all right? You're just saying that now because you're scared. No, man, it's true. I stole it, man. I took credit for it because I'm not actually funny. Come on, man. Do you know what it's like being a comedian but not being funny?
Almost all of the comedians that Carlos stole from became bigger than him during the podcast and social media era, which just further drove his reputation into the ground as fans took sides with their new favorites. In a shocking twist of fate, Bobby Lee actually tried to help Mencia restore his reputation. He invited him onto his podcast to get him to come clean and admit to his theft. But he continued to deny, make excuses, and even claim to be a victim.
It's just like, that's what it is.
I realize how much negativity it creates.
They did something to me that comics up until then never done. We handled art together, right? There were different stories about Kinnison pulling out a gun on Dice and all that, but those stayed amongst us. That was never put on the internet so that normal people that don't know about comedy get involved.
What would you do differently about
Nothing.
That's what I was thinking.
I wouldn't do a thing different. I took the hit, but it's like the hit wasn't bad because I was right, and eventually I knew they would realize I was right, and I would wish that he would realize I was right.
I don't think you should air this, but I'm in a vulnerable place. You know that I have some family and some friends. I've stopped
Victim blaming.
some of my good friends from doing some to people that talk about me.
Now, I could be wrong, but if we were to interpret Mencia here, he essentially threatened Rogan that he has family members that would physically harm him. Bobby tried as hard as he could to get Mencia to take accountability, but it didn't work.
But a lot of your material was a little too similar to the ilk of Paul Mooney or, you know, Bill Hicks or, you know, the Cosby thing was, right. So my point, I know my point though being is that, you know, to me, where there's smoke, there's fire.
You personally have seen me write 20 minutes on stage in one show.
I have seen that, but I've also seen some of your act, you know, a little too close to things that have already been established, like the Bill Cosby bit.
Yeah, I've never seen that one. So
I know. My point though is that it's so similar, right?
Yeah.
For me, you know, there's certain codes that go on in comedy. Like for instance, I remember one time Johnny Sanchez said, you know, I'm doing this new bit about, you know, me walking through a spider web, but people from afar can't see you walk through the spider web, and so, you know, they just think you're a crazy person, right? Yeah. And I looked at him and I go, yeah, Brian Regan does that bit, and Johnny goes, oh, well, I'm not going to do it anymore. Right? There's that like little code, right? And I believe that if you had written that bit, that you would continue to do it. And I just feel like it might be a situation where it might be, you know, unfixable, which is a sad thing.
Arguably, the only reason comedians were able to steal without punishment in the past was because they succeeded before everything was posted online. It's not an exaggeration to say that the internet basically put an end to joke theft completely, and nobody felt this change more than Amy Schumer, when her reputation for stealing bits was posted all over YouTube. Amy Schumer exploded onto the comedy scene seemingly out of nowhere. She had an advertising campaign for Butterfinger, was a reoccurring guest on Fox News' Red Eye with Greg Gutfeld, and in 2013 she secured a comedy sketch show called Inside Amy Schumer that ran for 6 years, almost just as long as The Chappelle Show and Mind of Mencia.
6 years, damn.
She was also starring in movies and even making her own, like Trainwreck with SNL
Yeah,
legend
he's actually making banks, huh?
Bill Hader. But Schumer had been in stand-up comedy for less than a decade, which is the length of time comics believe is necessary to be a solid professional. All of her recent success made her look like an industry plant, with a majority of people agreeing that she was never funny to begin with.
And I realized there's holes in the bottom of the trash can, so really I'm just puking all over my own and sweatpants.
So we're engaged. No, just kidding.
And while a lot of women have had a hard time being accepted in comedy, Schumer's jokes would fall flat anytime she wasn't surrounded by the fringe group that enjoyed her work. Most of her material was about vaginal hygiene, gross, and how she was a no-nonsense boss babe that deserved to be in the industry because she spoke her mind. And a lot of people resented her presence from the very start. She's living proof that literally anybody can become successful in comedy, even the unfunniest person on earth. I can't even tell if she's making a joke. And whenever she did
Why didn't he do it then?
come up
What?
with new joke premises, it was often mean-spirited and felt less like a joke and more like a personal attack. Like when she made fun of Steve-O from Jackass at the roast of Charlie Sheen, saying that he should have passed away instead of his late friend Ryan Dunn.
And Steve-O is here. Steve-O, great try. Steve-O! But I truly am, no joke, sorry for the loss of your friend Ryan Dunn. I know you must have been thinking it could have been me. I know we were all thinking, why wasn't it? Thank you.
Even Steve-O wasn't laughing.
And while people are quick to say that she only got backlash because she is a woman, this is one of those jokes that was in poor taste no matter who it came from. She was probably looking for shock value. It was a horrible joke to make to a guy that lost his best friend. I've watched Steve-O practically my whole life and I've never seen him have that look. Amy is just so inconsistent, especially how close this was to Ryan's passing. The public perception truly started to shift in 2015 when The Guardian posted a story called Amy Schumer, Comedy's Viral Queen. For such a keen observer of social norms and an effective satirist of the ways gender is complicated by them, Schumer has a shockingly large blind spot around race. Her lackluster stint hosting the MTV Movie Awards, a rare misstep, featured lazy jokes about Latino women being crazy. Schumer has said she's not worried about the show upsetting people because viewers know we have good intentions. But as Ann Theriault wrote for the Daily Dot, Amy Schumer frequently makes jokes that perpetuate stereotypes rather than dismantle them. It's hard not to feel like Schumer is only here for women who look like her. Now, this was a respectable critique, but what made it worse for Schumer was that the jokes she made about race weren't even her jokes to begin with. They were usually blatant rip-offs of other people's work, like when she took Kevin Nealon's bit about Asians looking tired.
It dawned on me that I don't see it in colors. I don't. In high school, I went out with this Chinese girl for a while once. I didn't even know she was Chinese. I thought, I don't know, maybe really tired? You know? No, seriously, I felt bad. I kept bringing her home early every night. I said, you get a little sleep, we'll do this again another time. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere.
I couldn't be less racist. I mean, I was at a party 2 weeks ago in LA, and who walks in but Michelle
Could wondered.
And out of nowhere, she tells me that Oliver Stone, the director, she's like, he has this huge Asian fetish, and I find it totally offensive. And I'm like, why, Quan? That sounds awesome, And she's like, well, I'm offended because I'm Asian. And I was just like, well, I'm sorry, but I didn't even notice that. I thought you were just like really tired.
Or when her show, Inside Amy Schumer, took a Mad TV sketch about not recognizing a black retail worker.
How's this? Oh, that's perfect. They can ring you up right over there. Thanks so much. Sure.
Okay, I'm Bengi. If you need any other sizes, you please let me know, all right? Okay. There you go.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how you doing?
Great.
All right, did somebody help you with this?
Yeah, she's right over. Oh, she's not there.
Did someone help you today?
Yeah, Who was it? I don't see him.
Oh, that's okay. What did she look like?
She's
Comedy Central, appropriate.
dark hair. She was wearing a blazer.
Oh, yeah, all the girls are wearing blazers.
Yeah, but this was a green one.
Yeah, that's the uniform.
Do you know what he looks like?
Yeah, he is wearing like a vest, or like a plaid shirt, I feel like.
I don't know what everyone who works here wore today.
He had short hair.
And again, if this was just a few jokes, maybe Schumer could have avoided her demise. But there are so many cases of joke theft that you can find 20-minute videos jam-packed full of stolen material.
And they crawl into your bed, and because their bones are growing and everything, they can only sleep in certain positions, obviously.
There's a compilation for
The
that.
swastika tend to be the most popular.
Because I swear I found the one guy in Manhattan that loves like spooning, just hugging all night. And I like sleeping by myself like a swastika. I'm just like,
Sleeping in the shape of a swastika is too unique of a premise for it to be a coincidence, considering that is not at all a normal way of describing a sleeping position. She even stole one of Ellen DeGeneres' jokes and then delivered it right back to her on her own show.
And something about the darkness, we just lose all of our inhibitions in the darkness. Is the popcorn really that delicious we must shovel handfuls of it into our mouth?
I'm not sure that's funny.
popcorn, the way I think we all eat popcorn, which is, at first you always kind of start out kind of like lying to yourself, like,
Telling it to her, that's brutal.
like one piece at a time, and then like you get a little more real, right? And then eventually you get real, and it's just, like I've split my lip trying to get one more kernel. It's true.
I think Ellen is more funny than her.
Do you eat popcorn like that though? Are you a popcorn lover?
Yeah, I do. And I eat it exactly like that.
Amy had a habit of promoting people's specials and then stealing from them, essentially telling on herself.
Attell is the best. Attell. Did you see a special road work?
I heard it's awesome.
It's so funny.
Because balls are disgusting, aren't they? Wow. And they stink. Yeah, they do. All right, I'll speak for my balls. On my best day, my balls might smell like a foot. On my best day.
Here's why he's brave. On my best day, my smells like a small barnyard animal. Okay?
But I'm not going to be one of those crazy pregnant ladies who tries to get all back in shape right after they get pregnant. No. Hopefully, if you see me in a year, I will have the kind of body where if I do a nude scene on television, people will commend me for being courageous.
So I tweet out this photo of myself, okay? I'm holding coffee, I'm topless in just underwear, and it goes viral. And that's when I learned the word you don't want people to use when a nude photo of you goes viral. Brave?
Amy Schumer's jokes are like when you copy and paste homework, but it sounds too smart, so you have to make it sound dumber. And despite the mounting evidence against her, Schumer made efforts to push back on the idea that she was stealing material.
Anybody who writes on my show, we sit there, we think of ideas, and then we're like, oh no, that's a Key and Peele. Oh no, that was this do something, you know, we've not done so many scenes because it was in a commercial.
Like watching videos.
One person saw a little bit of it somewhere else. I would never do anything that was even similar to anyone else.
And like many other comedians before her, since she was a big enough draw, these stolen jokes did not end her career overnight, but it was more like death by 1,000 cuts. Her Netflix special, The Leather Special, was flooded with 1-star ratings and labeled painfully unfunny. She claimed it was due to alt-right trolls review bombing the special, but the backlash had already spread far beyond politics. Her film roles started drying up, her show ended due to low ratings, and she quietly stepped away from the spotlight. These days, Amy Schumer is still working, and I'm sure she still has a core fan base, but she is well past her prime with seemingly no chance of reaching the peak she once
I guess he met all the money, so whatever.